16, by far one of the best animated series of the 2000s. For those of you who haven't seen this show, first of all, what are you doing? There are full episodes online on YouTube ready to watch. Go do it. 16, for those of you who don't know, I'll give you a quick background, was a Canadian animated sitcom that focused on the lives of 6 dynamic and interesting teenagers, namely Jonesy, Jude, Wyatt, Nikki, Jen, and Caitlin. Basically, each of these characters sort of embodied certain classically stereotypical qualities. So Jonesy was the playboy, big shot jock that you can find in your friend group. Jen was the responsible, organized one, also known as the mom friend. Wyatt was the nerdy, shy, kind of musical drama geek type. Nikki is the tough, edgy, socially deviant one, also known as like the punk rocker. Jude was the skater, slacker, sort of dude vibe, easygoing. And then finally there was Caitlin, who was the newcomer into the group, who basically was preppy, spoiled, rich, with an affinity for shopping and boys. For obvious reasons, this show was an amazing hit. That tackled storylines like issues of being a woman and sexual identity and things like that. And for that reason, it became extremely popular both in Canada and the United States. Um, okay, moving on to the first episode, which I'm going to review today, and it's called Take This Job and Squeeze It. Basically, in this episode, the teens are all just trying to find a job in the mall, which we can all relate to. We all need the summer jobs, especially those of us in college. Shout out to all the college students taking exams right now. Um, the first episode starts off with Caitlin and her friend Trisha. They go inside the mall and then they decide to part ways and go on their separate shopping adventures, which at first glance seems a bit odd considering whenever I go shopping, I don't know about you guys, but I usually go with my friends and we all go to the same stores and the same places to like hang out. That's the reason you go to the mall with your friends. But they don't do it that way this time. So Caitlin goes and she ends up kind of interacting with the other 5 characters in a interesting way. She goes to get lemonade, and Jen is working at the lemonade stand. And she goes to pay for her $1.90 drink and decides the best way to pay for that is to pull out her credit card. Upon realizing that you can't use a credit card for a purchase that's small, she decides to pull out a $50 bill. This is a quick sort of just minor note for those of you who live in Canada. I live in Ontario, and I don't know, I think pretty much other countries have this thing too where I'm pretty sure you can pay for $1.90 with a credit card. I've done it before. I've gone to like Starbucks or Tim Hortons and used my credit card to buy like a small drink or something. But okay, that was the thing. Just to, be a critic about. But anyways, it's almost like the group kind of jinxed her when they were kind of jealous of the fact that she pulled out a $50 bill, because later on in the episode, she goes into the Khaki Barn, which is kind of this like atypical sort of like Aritzia vibe store. Aritzia, Forever 21, stores like that. And so she goes in there and she's trying to buy her stuff, and her credit card gets declined. And she doesn't realize that credit cards have limits. They do, for those of you who may be too young for credit cards. Credit cards definitely have limits because, it's a thing. And so she does what any teenager does, including myself. Whenever I'm in trouble, I pull out my phone and I call my dad. So she calls her dad and lets him know about what's going on, and her dad is not happy. He is not having it. He tells her that she needs to get a job in order to pay back all the money that was on her card. And so basically now all of the teens are looking for jobs. And so then the show quickly pans to like a montage style of all of them, going to interviews and doing interviews. And they break basically every interview rule ever invented. Just a quick caveat though, in this show, they all sign up for jobs and get the interview within the same day. This does not happen in real life. It takes about you applying to about 10, 20 jobs, and you might get like a call back from like one or two of them, and they set up an interview for like a week in advance or something. So it's a whole process, but this is a TV show. So they go in, they do their interview, and well, let's just say everyone except Jen totally tanks their interview. Jen, I told you, is the organized one, so she goes in prepared with all the right answers and the charm, and she ends up getting the job that she wants, which is to work at the penalty box. So, but everybody else, like for example, Caitlin goes in there and she decides in the middle of her interview to take a phone call, which you should never do, or critique the outfit style of the people interviewing her, which again is not a really smart move. And then Jude, poor Jude, he's asked what his worst qualities are, and he sits there and he lists 17 of them. Do not do that ever, please, because that's wow. And then so they all go back and they're totally discouraged, about the fact that they couldn't even get a simple minimum wage job. But then they regroup. They ask for some advice from Jen, who obviously got a job, and then they later on decide to ignore most of her advice anyways, because when Jude goes in for his interview and he's really nervous, Jonesy basically gives him the advice to lie. Just complete flat out lie, which again I do not recommend you do. Please do not lie on your resume or like in an interview, because it does not go well and you will not get hired. It's just a bad idea. Don't do it. But he does it, and this is a cartoon, so he ends up getting hired as a fast food chain manager at a place called Stick It. And then Wyatt goes on and he gets a job at Spin This, which is a music store, which kind of fits with his whole vibe and his character. Jonesy also manages to get a job, but then he also manages to subsequently get fired, which happens a lot for him, so I would get used to that. And then near the end of the episode, Jen and Caitlin have become friends. Jen has offered to let Caitlin work at the Lemon, because Jen has to, find someone to replace her so that she can move on to work at the penalty box. So then Caitlin goes and she tries to learn, but she's just very irresponsible, again, taking a bunch of phone calls, not listening, spilling her drinks. And then in the middle of all this, her friend Trisha comes back, makes fun of her for trying to get a job, tells her that she no longer wants to be friends with her, which is a really, really horrible thing to do to someone. You can't be friends with someone and then judge them for having a job. That's absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, so all this stuff happens, and then Jen is just at near the end of her rope. You can tell she's completely fed up with Caitlin's attitude and her irresponsible behaviors, and she just reads her the riot act. She just starts telling her all the things that she's doing wrong. But then Jen, not knowingly, is doing all of this when her boss, Coach Halder, is like hearing everything. And then he begins to rethink his decision to hire her because of a quote temper tantrum. But then surprisingly, Caitlin is quick to, come to Jen's defense, saying that Jen has been helping her all day and that she's almost as responsible person Caitlin knows and has ever met, and that Coach Halder needs to keep her. Jen is moved by the whole thing, and the gang is totally impressed with Caitlin's self-sacrificing kind of move. And then the episode ends on a hilarious note in which Nikki's job is revealed, and she ends up getting a job at the last place anyone would expect. She has been hired as a part of the Khaki Barn team, and the whole gang goes to see this, and it's the beginning of her suffering sort of arc. Overall, this episode was pretty awesome. I feel like everything was set up well, all the characters, supporting characters, and normally when I go back and I watch shows that I watched as a kid, I'm very surprised that I thought something like that was entertaining, but this show is the exception. It just keeps getting better every time you watch it. I could have watched this series probably over and over and over and not get sick of it. I mean, it's hilarious. It's wonderful. So that's it. That's my little take and review of like this episode of this show. Comment below and let me know, did you like this? Do you have any other recommendations for cartoons or animations that I should review too? Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe and share this video. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!